Hey everyone, welcome back. Previous video we were working inside the lobby menu on the designer tab. So we got this far and set up our design layout for our lobby menu. Up next we're going to start working on the graph, so how we populate all this information. We're going to do that in this video. And as I mentioned in one of the previous videos, you're going to start to see more communication between blueprints here. So we're going to hop around a little bit and create some variables and functions that we'll need to call as part of our lobby menu when we start getting to that graph. But before we do any of that, there was a couple other things that I wanted to do here on the lobby menu designer tab, just to do it and get it out of the way. I'm going to add some of the other windows that we haven't created yet, because we're going to need to access them a little bit later. So the first is the chat window. So we should, if we scroll all the way down under user created, we created the widget. We could take our chat window and we can drag that inside of our grid panel. And let's see, it should have added it at the bottom down there. If we select it, we can specify where we want it to appear. It's going to appear in row 1. So down there, there's no content there, but this is where it will appear so that we have it there for now. The other thing that we're going to add is, let's go ahead and move this up and collapse this. We're going to add our game settings and our character select windows. So let's take our game settings, drag that on top of the canvas panel. Just anywhere is fine because we just need to access it. Same thing with our character select. Let's take our character select up at the top there. And let's just drag that on top of the canvas panel as well. So, and for both of these, again, there's no content for these. Both of these, we're going to set these to hidden by default because we're going to turn them on whenever we press a button. So our game settings, we'll set that to hidden by default. And our character select, we'll set that to hidden as well. And we'll just leave them up there for now. So with that, let's compile and save. And we'll come back to this and fine tune that a little bit later. OK, before we start working on the graph, there's going to be some, like I said, some variables and functions and things that we'll need to call. The first is going to be inside of the game mode. So let's go to the game mode, the lobby game mode. Should be here, lobby game mode. And that opened off screen. I've already created some stuff in here, but we're going to create a little bit more before we start working on this. Somewhere below all of this, we're going to have an event called, custom event, called launch the game. So inside of our lobby menu, when we start the session, we're going to call this launch the game inside of our game mode. So that's why we need that. It doesn't need to be replicated, doesn't need to be run on server versus client, just custom event called launch the game. Now, the other thing that we're going to need inside of our lobby game mode is, I think, a variable. Let's see. Yep. We're going to need a variable. We're going to create a variable, and this variable is going to be called button status. And let's go ahead and put that in a category. We'll just say server settings. That doesn't need to be replicated because this is going to only apply to the server. Excuse me, it's not button status. Let's rename this. Oops. Let's rename this to can we start? So can we start? We need to check and see, can we start the game? So we need to make sure that everybody has selected a character first before we can proceed. And that's going to tell us whether or not we can start the game. And then we'll bind inside of our lobby menu. We'll bind this button to that property. So it'll only become active once everybody has selected a character and this Boolean has been set to true, indicating that we can start. And we're going to need to access that when we start setting up our lobby menu. So we need to create it now. OK, let's see if there's anything else inside the game mode that we need. I think that's it. So let's compile and save. Let's close the game mode for now. Let's go to the content browser. We're going to need to open under the lobby the connected player widget. So go ahead and double click, open that up. And we haven't done anything in here just yet. We're just going to hop over to the graph because we're going to need to create a publicly exposed variable in here. So let's go ahead and do that. And this publicly exposed variable, click the add variable button, is called player info or players info. So it's going to be of the player info type. And let's go ahead and make it editable, expose on spawn. Let me make sure and see, this does need to be replicated, I'm pretty sure. Just checking my notes. Yep, it does need to be replicated. So let's make sure that it's replicated, and we'll just put it in the player info section, like so. So editable, expose on spawn, replicated, and put in a category. Go ahead and save that. And there's one other thing that we need to do in here too, I think. Let's see. Is that actually all we need to do in there? I think that's all. Thought there was something else. I think we're good. I think we're ready to start working on the graph portion of our lobby menu. So let's close this for now. We'll come back to that later. So inside of our lobby menu, let's go to the graph now and start working on this. So again, we created some stuff in here already. So we're going to fill this out now. Okay, first thing that we'll do above all of these, let's right click and just say event construct. So upon construction, we're going to get the owning player. So the player that owns this widget, get owning player. And then going to drag off this and cast to the lobby PC. So our lobby player controller blueprint. So connect that up. And we're going to promote that to a variable. So let's promote that to a variable called lobby controller ref. So, okay. Next thing we're going to do is determine whether or not we are the server or the client version of this lobby menu. So we'll hold B and left click, create a branch, pick this up. Fortunately, there's a condition for us called isServer, or a function for us that we'll check isServer. Plug that in. So. And if it's the server, then we're going to change the text that appears on this button. If it's a client, it's going to say something different. So we need to create a variable for that. So let's create a variable. I'm just going to select this here and hit Control W and say ready button text. So, and now I'm going to Alt drag that in. We're now going to set that. It does need to be replicated, so that's good. We'll call it start session. Well, actually, let's actually make it look right. So start session, maybe exclamation point. We'll copy and paste this off the false now because we're the client. So that text on the button will now say toggle ready. Toggle whether or not I am ready. Now, if we are the client, we don't want them to access the game settings. So let's take our game settings here, hold Control, drag that in. And we'll say, well, let's make sure I grab the right one because I think I did this before. We need the, not the game settings, but the set game settings. You should have came up with a better name for this. So this button, set game settings, we don't want that to appear. So let's take set game settings, Control drag that in, drag off this and say remove from parent. So remove that button. So that's for the client. That's all we need to do. For the server, what else we are going to do is, let's take our lobby controller reference, hold Control, drag that in. Whoops. We can then drag off of it and get our player settings. So get player settings. Then going to break that apart. So break player info. Excuse me, not break player. We need to set members in it. Let's drag off of it and set members in player info. So restore, so right click and restore all pins. Connect this up. And the only thing that we're going to change here is this player status because the server doesn't need to indicate whether they are ready or not. Server is actually the host. So we're going to change that to say host. And we'll right click on this and say remove all other pins. So that's what we're going to do there. So our server will say host. And that's all we're going to do for the server, the setup of our server menu. So let's add a comment around this. Hit C and say set up server menu based on server versus client connection. There we go. All right, next thing that we'll do is what happens when we click the leave lobby, because that's going to be pretty easy. We'll come to these in a moment. I'm just going to move those down a little bit more. So whenever we click on leave lobby, let's add an on-click for that. Move that up here. What we'll do is get owning player. destroy session, which again resides inside of our game instance. Oops, we don't want this one. Let's delete that. And let's right click and say destroy session. Now we can plug this in. Okay. On success, we're going to open a level. That level is going to be main menu. So, and that's all we need to do when we want to leave our lobby. So add a comment around this, and we'll say leave lobby, button pressed. Okay. Now we need to handle when we click the ready start button. So versus client versus the server, when we click this button, what happens? So let's go ahead and do that. I'm saving these for later. Let's take our ready start button. Should be right there. Add an on click for it. It keeps adding it underneath. It's telling me to do these right now, adding that button underneath it, but I don't want to do those just yet. So let's go ahead and define what happens when we click that ready start button. First of all, is it the server that's clicking this button? So B and left click to create a branch. Connect this up. Right click is server. Is it the server? Connect that up. If it's the server, we're going to do one thing. If it's the client, we're going to do another. So I'm going to create a custom event here. Custom event. This custom event is going to be called update status. Move that over for a second. If it's not the server, we're going to call that custom event called update status. Just so I don't have a chain of script over here. I'm creating a separate event for that. So let's do if it is the server first. First thing that we're going to do is right click, get game mode. There's one more thing we need to do in our game mode. I'm just now noticing it. Get lobby. Or cast to lobby game mode, so cast to lobby GM. We'll convert that to a pure cast. And 99% sure we didn't do this yet, but I'm going to check it. We need to get all player. Nope, sure haven't. So inside of our game mode, lobby game mode, we need to have a reference to all the connected player controllers at that point, because we're then going to tell everybody to show the loading screen, and then we can launch the game. So I'm going to compile and hop over to the lobby game mode. Did pretty good so far without having to go back and forth. So inside of our lobby folder, our lobby GM, go ahead and open that up. Go ahead and create a variable. The variable is going to be called all player controllers. It's going to be of the player controller reference type. It's going to be an array. And we'll put this under server settings too, just because, and it's going to be replicated. So let's compile now and save that and hop back to our lobby menu. We should be able to access that now. So we could say get all player controllers. And once we have that, drag off this for each loop. We're then going to cast to each individual lobby player controller for each player. So cast to lobby PC. And at that point, we could say show loading screen. And then once we're done, we can say launch the game. Or not off that one, off this one. So everybody has their loading screen displayed, and then we're going to launch the game. We do need to make sure that it's connected on the for loop here, so let's take our true and plug that in. I think so. My neatness just completely went out the window. So let's add a comment around this section up here. Let me move this over just a little bit more maybe. Just add a comment around this, and we'll say this is server clicked start session. Proceed to launch the game in the lobby game mode. So that's one thing that can happen. And let's move that over here. That's fine. For the client now, what we'll do is, let's see, Move that over. I'm going to create a flip-flop node, so just flip-flop. So this flip-flop node, connect that up. Doesn't need to be a replicated function for this. It should be okay because our variable is going to be replicated. So let's create a variable. Select our ready button text, Control W, duplicate it. We'll just call it ready status. So let's compile that. Alt drag it in. And we'll set this to say ready, exclamation point. Copy, paste. We'll set this to say not ready. So by default, we're not ready. So the first time we press it, we'll say ready. Second time we press it, we'll say not ready. Like so. Now we also need to define this inside of our player settings as well. So let's get owning player. Let's drag off of this and say cast to lobby player controller. Right click, convert to pure cast. From there, we can get our player settings. Get player settings. We're going to set members in player info. So drag off this, set members in player info. Right click, restore all structure pins. In both instances, we're going to do this. So let's connect both of these up. And what we'll do is take our player ready status, drop that on top of my player status. So that's what's getting set. Right click on this and remove all other pins. That's all we want to really worry about is this here. Okay, once we've done that, we're then going to, from our lobby player controller, say call update. So everybody knows to update because we've made changes. Connect this up. The struct out is going to go into player info there. And yes, we have changed status, so we're going to click that option there. So that's when the client clicks the ready button. So let's add our comment around this and say client clicked ready button, update status, and tell everyone else to update as well. Okay, and that's all we need to do for this now. So let me move those down just a little bit more. I promise we're going to get to you in a moment, guys. Let's add a comment around this whole section now, and this is handle ready start button click. So this handles the ready or start button click. And they do different things based off the server or client. Okay, we'll do a couple more things here, and then we'll bind all of our properties, and then we'll pause. So let's go ahead and continue. Let's do these two nodes down here at the bottom that we've been neglecting so much. So our clear player list here. For this, we're going to get our players window that we created. Player window, it should be under here. What did we call it? It should be player window. This. Oh, we didn't make it a variable. Let's make sure that this is a variable. So make that a variable for our player window. We should now see it over here. There it is. Control drag that in, drag off of this and say clear children. So we wipe it whenever we clear the player list. And then right underneath that is update player window. So for this, we're going to create a widget, create widget. That widget is going to be connected player. So connected player. It's going to expose that player info pin for us, which we can pass through like so. Connect that up, like that. And then what we'll do is we'll take our player window, copy, paste, drag off of this, and say add child. So we'll add a child. Connect this up. The content that we are going to be added is our connected player widget. So let's plug in the return like so. And owning player is, we could just say get owning player. It's fine. So this clears and adds players to the lobby window. So let's add a comment around this and just say clears, adds players to the lobby player window. So, okay, so compile and save. All right, let's see. let's do the rest of these just so we can get it done. So we need to display the character select window when we press it. It's not going to do anything yet because we haven't set that menu up, but let's go ahead and do that. So our character select, I called it something different here. Why did I call it that? Let's see. Unclicked, choose character, character select. We might actually not be able to do this yet because we haven't set up anything inside of here yet. Just debating on whether or not I want to do that. Let's see. Choose character button. Yeah, we're not going to do that yet, actually. We'll pause, actually. We will do the game settings, though. Let's go ahead and do the game settings, and then we'll wrap. I don't want to do the choose character just yet because we haven't set that up. So, sorry about that. Let's go ahead and let's go to our set game settings here. Set it on click for that. And for this, what we'll do, first of all, we'll get our game settings window. So our actual game settings window now. Hold Control, drag that in. Make sure that it is not currently visible. So it is visible. Let's B and left click for a branch. Connect this up. Connect that up. So if it's visible, then we don't want to bring it up again, so we're not going to do anything. What we'll do if it's not visible, however, is we'll drag off of this and say set visibility. Set it to visible. So. And this is another one. Did we do this? Let's see. Fill. Nope. Didn't do that either. Oh, man. So we need to call a function here inside of our game settings. So we'll do this, and then we'll pause this video after we do our binding. So let's go to our game settings. So no help over here. Lobby game settings. Let's drag this in. And let's go to the graph. And I'm going to create a custom event in here called fill players window. And we don't need to do this. Is only going to be run on the server, so we'll leave this as it is. And what this is going to do is, if we have our game settings window open, our game settings is going to allow us to change the map time, etc. But it's also going to have the option to kick players from the lobby. And we'll need to have a way, if the game settings window is already up and somebody connects, to populate that window with a new character or new player that has been added. So we're going to use this event to handle that. So let's compile and let's close the game settings for now. And then let's go back to the lobby menu. And now we should be able to call that. So let's drag off of this and say fill players window at the end. So add a commenter on this and just say game settings button was clicked. Fill the players, I should say fill the kick players window, which we haven't created yet either. But I think that's good. We have one more thing to do on this graph, but we'll do that a little bit later, and that's displaying the character select window. Or excuse me, not the character select. Yeah, the character select window. When we press the choose character button, I'm not quite sure. Actually, let me take one more look before we close this out. Oh, I was thinking of something different. So we are going to do this because it's super simple, similar to what we just did actually. So the choose character button. My naming convention's terrible. The choose character button here. Let's add an on click for this. I was looking for something else, and very similar to what we just did. Take the character select this here, control drag that in, is visible. Then we'll branch, be and left click, connect this up, connect that up. If it's already visible, don't do anything. If it's not, then we're going to take our character select window and set visibility. Connect that up, like so. We're also going to set the user focus for this. So set user focus to this. Player controller is going to be get warning player. So we can also do that for this as well. I didn't in my reference project for some reason, so whatever, it's fine. Let's leave it like this. So let's add a comment around this. And this is displays the character select window when pressed. So now we should have all the script inside of our lobby menu. All of that script is done. Let's bind all of our properties and then we'll close out this video. So let's go to the Designer tab and see what it is we need to actually bind here. So we'll start from the top. The server name, that's going to be bound to, click this drop down here, lobby server name. So we're going to have a lot of bindings. We'll work our way down. This image here, that's going to be bound to our map image. This text here is going to be bound to our map name. So map name. This text here should be our map time. Our players display should be bound to players display. Our button here, let's see, our start button here. We'll come back to that one in a minute because that one's going to have a little bit more to it. Let's see, what else is there? Is there any other bindings that we need to do? I think that's all the bindings that we need to do. So let's do the binding for this. So we're going to go to the behavior for this, and instead of having a property, we're going to create a binding for this. So let's create a binding for our start ready button there. And we'll call this, can I do F2 here? Nope, sure can't. In our function, hit F2, and we'll say this is enable ready start button. So first thing we're going to need to do is check and see if this is the server. So is server, B and left click to create a branch, connect that up, connect this in like so. And for this, we'll right click, get game mode, then cast to our lobby game mode. And let's just promote that to a pure cast. We can then drag off of this and say get can we start? Question mark. Let's see, did we create that? No, we didn't create that variable. So get can we start. We're going to promote this to a variable. I think we could promote this to a local. Yeah, let's promote this to a local variable, and we'll call this button status. Like so. Plug that in. Let's do it like that. And button status is going to appear down here at the end. So just drag and drop that on like so. So that's the true if we're the server. If we are not the server, let's get owning player. Let's cast to lobby player controller. So lobby player controller. Let's pure cast that. And let's get the player settings. So get player settings. And we're going to, let's go ahead and break this. Let's expand this. We want to get the character at this point. Get two equal signs. Does this character equal our base character? Have we not selected an actual playable character yet? And hit B and left click for a branch. That's going to be our false condition. We're going to plug this in. Move this over just a little bit more. Then going to take our button status, copy and paste it, plug that in, copy and paste it, plug that in. And we're going to set that one to true, plug this one in, plug that one in. So essentially what we're doing here is for the client, let me squeeze that down. For the client, we're checking to see if we've selected a character. If we have, then we can click the toggle ready button. If we haven't, then we can't say that we're ready because we haven't selected a character yet. So let's compile and save. And let's go to the Designer tab on this, And I think we're going to pause here. We did quite a bit, actually. This is another long video. It's Long videos, I swear. We're going to pause here. We'll pick it back up in the next video where we start working on the lobby game mode and getting all of our clients updated with the correct information and displaying that inside of our lobby menu. So we'll pause here. We'll pick it back up in the lobby game mode setup. Thank you guys for watching.